In this conversation, I'm joined by therapist and longtime colleague Kara Mifflin for a rich and grounded exploration of healing that goes far beyond traditional talk therapy. Kara shares how her work has evolved from a long foundation in internal family systems into a more integrative approach that now includes Ayurveda, energy awareness, and connection with the divine. Together, we talk about the role of digestion, and not just of food, but of life experiences in mental and emotional health, and how many of the symptoms we accept as normal may actually be signs of imbalance. Kara offers practical and accessible ways to understand anxiety, overwhelm, and disconnection through an Ayurvedic lens, while also reflecting on how spirituality, intention, and connection to something greater than ourselves can support deep and lasting healing. This is a thoughtful, expansive, friendly conversation about returning to balance, reconnecting with our true nature, and remembering just how good we are actually meant to feel. Kara and I actually go way back. We worked together in community mental health for many years, and we continue to remain close, sharing both personal and professional experiences. Kara is a certified IFS therapist whose work weaves together internal family systems with trauma informed therapy and the holistic principles of Ayurveda. With a deeply integrative approach to healing, Kara helps clients understand the connection between emotional well being, digestion, energy flow, and daily rhythms, supporting them in restoring balance in both body and mind. Grounded in compassion and curiosity, her work invites people to reconnect with their natural state of calm, clarity, and self trust. Kara is especially passionate about helping clients metabolize life experiences, not just cognitively, but energetically and physically as well, so that healing can unfold in a more embodied and sustainable way. Welcome to the Spiritually Curious Therapist, where science, spirit, and the self come together in the art of healing. I'm Jody Silverman, psychotherapist, Reiki master, and fellow seeker. Here we explore how presence, compassion, and nervous system wisdom helps us reconnect with the heart, the body, and the soul. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Spiritually Curious Therapist. Today, I have with me a good friend and colleague, Kara Mifflin. Some of you may remember Kara from my first season. I think Kara was maybe like my second or third episode, and we really dug deep into IFS and self-healing. And I asked Kara to come back again because since that time, she has really gotten very into Ayurveda and the ways in which we bring food, but it's more than that. It's more than food. So I'm gonna let you, Kara, talk about because I don't even have the language for it. But so I'm just gonna use the word food.
Yeah.
The way that we bring food into not only our physical body, but our energetic body as well, because there's a lot of energy around the Ayurvedic practice. So I'm really excited to hear more about that. But I think mostly over the last couple years, as Kara has gotten more and more involved and learning more about it, her excitement has really gotten me excited, especially in the ways in which Kara not only uses Ayurveda to take care of herself personally as well as professionally, but also the ways in which she brings it into her clinical practice. So, really excited to hear more about how that works for you, Kara, and whatever you can share with our audience about Ayurveda practices, IFS, self healing, and the divine. So, welcome, Kara.
Thank you, Jody. Good to be with you again.
It's always good to be with you. Kara and I are actually together like every week. We have lunch. This is going to be a very informal, conversation. But some of the questions that I have for Kara are questions I have not asked yet. I'm really excited to have this space, to have this conversation. maybe we could start with a couple things. One is just hearing more about you and your journey and how you got to where you are now and all of the practices that have led you there. And then also, and this is a two-part question, starting off with just explaining what Ayurveda is, because I think a lot of people have probably heard the term, but don't fully understand the concept
Sure.
or the practice, I should say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the first thing that I mean, Ayurveda translates to the science of life. That is the actual translation. It's a Sanskrit word. It is a really a holistic system for health and well-being that teaches people, has taught me to really tune in and understand our nature and to really see ourselves as nature and understand that we have all of the same elements housed within us that exists in out in nature. And it's a deep study of understanding what the elements, how they're behaving inside of you. It does look, as you said, at something that's really important. One of the key components of Ayurveda is our capacity to digest. And it's not, like you said, it's not just digesting food, it's also digesting anything that we take in with our senses.
Mhm.
Anything we take in our senses. And in terms of how I was introduced to it, so it for me all started with breakfast. And as simple as that sounds, that's the thing. We start out simple. I like starting out I got a recipe. I was out somewhere having breakfast with somebody who brought their own breakfast, and it was this, like, amazing smelling, totally different type of breakfast food than I have had seen at the time, and it was like a simple rice porridge with a little turmeric, a little bit of ghee, and some salt and ginger. Anyway, and I just started having a breakfast, a warm breakfast, started learning about the importance of really being gentle on my digestion first thing in the morning. And there was almost an immediate effect. I felt nourished. Like I could go like I used to be a kind of person who could really just have a cup of coffee and then like have lunch, and just kind of like skate into the day or be busy, like wake up with only enough time to get myself out the door and whatever needed to be done. Starting with the breakfast and then starting with committing myself to a warm breakfast every day. I immediately began to feel different. It was like I was setting a tone for the day. And the tone started out with take care of yourself, nourish yourself.
Mm.
And really it just kind of has evolved from there. That was about 3 years ago, I want to say. I am, like every day I start with some other things as well, other practices that have since been built before breakfast. But really taking a deeper look, a deep dive at how all the choices that we make throughout the day have an impact. Every single one. And becoming more aware of what those impacts are just helps guide good decisions and making like the next right choice for myself.
I love that you started with breakfast and this idea of how that changed everything. Even just like that simple flip in practice, right? Just adding that one little piece and how that really represented for you in so many different ways this notion of caring for yourself. And I think about that, because my brain goes through the nervous system lens and how do we bring more safety in. And so many of us start our days just like you had said, how you used to be with like a cup of coffee and like rushing out the door. And what that does to someone's system. You're already starting off the day in this like really keyed up hypervigilance state, right?
Yeah, well, and the interesting thing is it emphasizes the importance of really taking care of your digestion. One of the first things that I learned was that it looks at something called acne, which is basically like transforming. something into something else. But our stomachs, our digestive tract does that. But you thinking about it as like a fire that has been kind of smoldering through the night, and really, imagining like put what you want to put on there to help yourself start to build the capacity to burn efficiently and to burn strong, so that and again, so that you're not just digesting what you take in food, but you're able to digest what the day brings to you, and then heating that up to an optimal place, and that it just helps you be able to not just metabolize, right, what I'm having for lunch and all these things, but metabolize, any challenges that arise, emotions that come up, things that kind of happen that have an impression. It's also really helped me to think about from a psychological perspective, thinking about trauma. We talk about trauma and the experiences we have that shape us. To me, it's like shaped my experience of like, from my lens of, it's like undigested experiences that have not been metabolized because for whatever reason, maybe they've been encoded in shame or something. And so they've just kind of been hanging out in our undigested tract, creating
Mm-hmm.
disease. Yeah, so I just love the idea that, we can take care of our digestion, which helps us digest all of life, including those experiences that have yet to be metabolized. What nutrients and learning we want to pull out from traumatic experience, and then what the waste, the mala is that we want to let go of, and how we do that, and how important that is to just opening up the flow of energy, because ultimately Ayurveda is looking at how energy, life energy, prana, flows through us, because if it's flowing well, we are free from disease.
Mm-hmm.
It's where it gets stuck and blocked, which is I have to say, like, it's having me unlearn a lot of the things I learned about mental health in so many different ways.
That's really fascinating. Can you speak a little bit more about, like, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of things that you had to unlearn, which often happens when we expand our views and are open to bringing other practices to support the work that we're doing. But was there anything in particular that was like a big aha that you really had to work through letting go of?
Yeah, one of the first ones that comes to mind is this idea that, that all shifts in energy needed to have this sort of heady, psychologically focused approach. Like in parts work in IFS, you're helping people to really identify different aspects of their personality, different ways of operating different parts. And that can be pretty challenging for people to see maybe a part that depresses us as a part and not just something we've identified with so strongly. One of the things that Ayurveda has really it continues to help me practice is recognizing that I can do things and offer things to my clients to help them kind of shift energy within themselves pretty quickly
Mm.
without having to do some deep dive. Like, and to, I guess, consider emotion, thought, stress as just energy, which is really, really different because energy flows. It's like an energy that can be blocked and stuck, and like, energy gets stuck. And just thinking about it like that opens up so many different channels to tending to it and helping it. And I know that you, with Reiki and all the other types of modalities, really looking at myself more as a channel
Mm.
for healing energy to flow through, as opposed to, someone who has to know something, is going to teach something, is going to do something. Like, it's, that's been huge. That's been a huge shift for me.
Yeah, I love that. We talk about often, this idea of, well, especially in psychotherapeutic Reiki, like being a channel for energy, but also just holding space and the dual attunement, right? Where you're really just it's not just because it actually takes a lot of focus and a lot of work, but that our job is not to inundate people with information or even to necessarily excavate things that might not need to be excavated. And that energy plays such a big role in people's ability to shift and heal and open up to new experiences.
Definitely, definitely. As you were saying that, another shift in the same vein has been the idea. So Ayurveda has principles of, maybe you've heard about doshas, and it tells you something that describes sort of how the elements are at work in you. And something that I'm understanding more and more is that whenever there's mental disturbance, mental illness, a disorder, whatever, however you want to label that, that it always includes, it's always connected to something called a vata imbalance, which is how air behaves within us, and looking at what's creating the imbalance. So a lot of air, and vata really has such a strong impact on our minds and the way that our minds work. And a lot of air in our system tends to have us doing a lot of, a lot of anxiety, thinking, a lot of, it takes it. There's another quality called rajasic, which is outward moving energy, up and out, and just finding that there are different ways to help people quiet, calm, and bring forward stillness and peace, which in Ayurvedic is called sattva, like those qualities, just different ways of approaching and having impact quickly. Like, things can shift very quickly. You don't have to, certain things take some time, certainly to get to digesting some of those deeper pains or places we're protecting, but I don't know, how we live makes a big difference. And how we live, this information is helping me to get more access to what I feel to be my higher self and my true nature much, much easier. It's just more accessible the more I'm learning to implement and practice and take on. Yeah.
Can you say a little bit more about the different elements? Just maybe,
So,
yeah, describing what they are, because I know there's vata, right? Which and then
right,
there's
vata, right. So vata is, it's actually two elements. It's air and ether.
mhm,
So takes a look at how that is behaving in your system. And air, that vata is really responsible for all movement in your body, all movement that takes place in your body. It's responsible for how we bring in prana, how we bring in energy, and also how we let go of and eliminate any waste that's not serving us or anything that we need to let go of. So that's the air element. And then there is pitta, which is the fire element and water. And that is really about helping us transform. We can think maybe about the warmth of our blood. We can think about the warmth of our digestive fluid. There's fire in that, and it can really kind of help transform anything we take in. And that's really a big job of helping us to do many things and to have some out energy. And then there is kapha, which is essentially earth, also water, but earth and water. And that is really our ground. It is what makes up the mass of us, and our tissue, and it's also involved with love and our capacity to love. And so, yeah, so these are just the different elements that we look at, and we pay attention to. They also give us really good clues to seeing where we become imbalanced, where the
mhm,
imbalance exists. In Ayurveda, it's not about treating symptoms or disease. Ayurveda is really, the way that I'm understanding it, is about really seeing what's causing us to be out of balance, what's taking us out of balance. An example of that for me, like over the holidays, my mental workload just got so high, like so high that and having sustained that for a good, well, month, like continuously planning and thinking through and doing all these things, and then multitasking, like dividing my attention, like it just threw me out of balance in a pretty big way. And that's vata. Like that's what you can expect. And I have like high vata in my system, high air. And so I am susceptible to being thrown out of balance that way.
how would somebody know that they're out of balance?
There's a lot of physical indicators of that. Number one, In like constipation is one indicator that you're out of balance, but also, of course, an inability to sleep
Mhm.
is another indicator. Not having an appetite, not feeling hungry, uh, becoming easily overwhelmed, having more reactive as opposed to responsive energy, feeling foggy in your mind, unclear. Any disease that you have, I mean, because it's all connected to your digestion. So any diseases, eczema, arthritis. I mean,
Mhm.
there's all kinds of indications. There are definitely different stages of disease, but to notice an imbalance, like because the other thing that you notice is you just start to feel unwell.
Mhm.
You don't feel like yourself, maybe.
Mhm.
You might not. I mean, that was what was happening for me most recently. I was just like not feeling like as good as I have been feeling. And I because I know and have had some really beautiful opportunities to see how good we're actually supposed to feel in life when we move through that. And things like season can also change us too, because we have to make some adjustments to how we take care of ourselves with the changing season. Thinking about ourselves as nature, we have to we have to keep that in mind as well.
Can you say a little bit more about that? And you and I have talked about this, especially when we would do those winter runs. Kara and I used to meet once a week to run, and I've kind of bowed out of that. I know you still do it, Kara, but there was one winter. Have you been running in these super cold temperatures?
Not for the last week, but prior to that, I was, yeah.
Yeah, good for you. But I remember
And ice is not good for running, so no.
do you remember that one time we ran up that hill and it was, like, all snow and we couldn't go on the trail because it was all snow and ice, but we've had lots of conversations when we would meet up at, like, 7 a.m. on those winter mornings and be like, "Oh my god," like, getting out of bed was near impossible, and just really, like, validating for each other that, like, in the winter, we're supposed to want to hibernate. We're supposed to want to withdraw and, like, sit on our couch with the blankets over us, and I feel like so many people really do struggle from not have from the darkness in the winter, seasonal affect disorder, and there's this expectation that our energy should be at the same level each season, and I think what I learned through from you is that, like, that's not necessarily true.
Mhm. Yeah, I one of the things that I really enjoyed talking to clients about, or as I've been learning along the way, is to like if we think about ourselves as animals, or think about ourselves in nature, that there's an invitation to kind of be under this mound of snow, right? Where we're sending energy to root, or we're sending energy, especially people who live in cold climates. I mean, if you don't live in a cold climate, and you're not acclimated in the same way, perhaps this would not be exactly the same. But I think for us who are here in the Northeast, this invitation that it is a time for maybe returning to root and fortifying and continuing to do. It's not a complete, like, I don't think it's good to just completely veg out, and that's not what I'm saying. But if our mind isn't resisting what what our nature is telling us, then we can be at greater ease. If our mind is attached, like you were saying, if our minds become attached to the idea that we should be a certain way and maintain a certain level of productivity and all these other demands, which our society really, really emphasizes and encourages, then we can really kind of turn on ourselves if that's not what we're finding capacity for. And then we're judging ourselves, which are making what we're experiencing wrong. And I think that has so much to do with, yeah, with what ends up happening for a lot of people. But just to even consider that it's actually okay and people can let themselves off the hook a little bit, there's this immediate kind of relief.
Mhm.
That we don't have to say quite as productive. And I know there's a lot of different schools of thought about this, but we want to find ease and we want to be, gentle with ourselves. And I think folding in the consideration and the perspective of us as nature and looking at, how our nature is behaving within us similar to get cues from how nature is behaving outside of us can be really helpful.
Yeah, I can really appreciate that. And to your point, really tuning in to what our bodies are needing and wanting and responding in kind and with compassion is what helps us move through with ease, opposed to what we are used to in our culture, which is like, I should, all the shoulds, and then falling into this habit of self-criticism and blame, self-blame, that we're not good enough or doing what we need to be doing, which then creates the hypervigilance. It's just this like cycle that we really get stuck in. And I remember that first conversation. I haven't forgotten, like, winter hibernate. If I don't want to go out, I do not have to go out. Yeah, I just don't.
Yes, yes. I mean, and it's just like, even just reminders for gentleness and giving ourselves permission. I mean, whatever form that can take, to just accept that level of acceptance, accepting where we are. That we are not, somebody I was having this conversation with somebody not that long ago, and they pointed out that we are not hibernators. And fair, fair. We are not hibernators. Yes, we're not bears. I get it. And we still have all of the same elements within us and are impacted. And you talk about like seasons, in nature, but there's also seasons of our lives,
Mm-hmm.
right? And helping to kind of share some information and educate people on how the different seasons of our lives also affect whether you're, doing a bunch of growing as a young person, or you're doing a bunch of stabilizing as a middle adult, or and then actually the later part of our lives, there's, for women in particular, is like a drier season of our lives. So taking that information in and learning how to make some decisions to really reduce symptoms, reduce any kind of dis-ease. One of the things I've appreciated, and I'll share this little piece. I was with a client a couple weeks ago, and this is a mental health client, and they were having early pregnancy, became nauseated, but like their first pregnancy, nauseous the entire time, couldn't eat, horrible, horrible, horrible. So they're pregnant for a second time. You know, Ayurveda really provided an opportunity for me to look at what was happening and look at the disturbance of vata for this person, so that we could start putting together strategies to help bring some ground and some water, making sure there's plenty of moisture to help digestion and to help ground their energy, which was so empowering. But it also just became this other set of tools and a lens to be looking at struggles through and stress.
Yeah, and as I'm listening to you talk about this client and your experience with them, I'm reminded of how frustrating it can be for people who are experiencing what we now call mental health concerns, issues, whether it's depression or anxiety or PTSD, all the labels, which I'm actively rejecting the idea that we can separate mental health out from any other kind of health, right? And so this idea that one of the ways we can help our overall wellness is to tend to not only physiological imbalances, energetic imbalances, and the emotional and cognitive all are woven in there as well. I keep coming back to this idea of digestion and our gut, and like how important our gut is for all health, physical and what we call mental health and cognitive health. And how, if we're not tending to that, how that can impact so many areas of our lives.
Everything. It impacts everything. And someone might argue this, but it is pretty well studied that all disease, it's got its roots in digestion.
Mm.
Everything. I think, and to think about like all of our tissue, all tissue that is created in our bodies is derived from the nutrients that we gradually in stages take from the food that we eat. If we're not giving ourselves the opportunity to get good nourishment through fresh food and whole simple foods and balance and having good combinations of food that help both to nourish and draw nutrients in, but also to help clear out. We need good combinations, and all of that then builds tissue. And then the last actual tissue development is actually reproductive tissue. So it needs to go through all these patterns and cycles to nourish and build datus, which is our tissue. But it has to have the good nutrient, the ability and the capability to metabolize all the way through. We have so many reproductive health issues today. It has so much to do with diet and how we live.
That makes so much sense.
Mhm.
Would it be okay if we pivot just a tiny bit here? Because I know one of the things, and you mentioned it a little bit in terms of like connection with your higher self, but one of the things that you have brought into this practice is connection with the divine. There's a spiritual aspect to all of this. Can you talk a little bit more about how that has evolved for you and also how you bring that into your practice with folks, if you do?
Yes. Yeah. Let me just sit with that for a second.
Yeah, take your time.
So last time we met, I talked quite a bit about my 12-step journey in recovery.
Hmm.
I first became more connected with a power greater than myself through use of the 12 steps. Was in something called I'm still in adult children of alcoholics and other family dysfunction. And it's a 12-step program. But what that has helped me to build as a foundation for understanding, maybe even understanding childhood trauma or being raised with shame and addiction and fear as a becoming fragmented in spirit. It's like being fragmented from our true nature, the gods of our hearts, our higher selves, and IFS. We really think more about our higher self, the divine within that we're all connected to and have the same amount of. So that's been like a more than a decade-long journey of understanding and opening to what that really means for me. But it also has taught me that really in order to heal the things that people are looking to heal, it requires something greater than ourselves.
Hmm. Hmm.
And if, that doesn't mean that people who are atheists can't heal, but and that's fine. It's not about like one idea of what the divine is or what our higher selves is. There's many, many different for some people that's nature, some other but finding a way to cultivate, draw that in, bring that into our consciousness as a way to help us heal so that it's not all effort. It's not all, that we have to go through all these things in order to do it, learn skills, learn, whatever. It's an essence. And so through my trust in the flow of life and trusting more in like what the universe brings to you and this understanding that it's not all just a direct result of our actions,
Hmm.
that has helped, I think, my clients because I talk about that and I might respond with something. Here's an example too. Starting out sessions, I might, before we even get into anything that our minds are going to take hold of, just thinking about or considering an intention, an intention for our time together. And so if the intention is acceptance, because it usually comes from my client, whoever I'm working with, there's an idea of what there's a need for, whether it's acceptance or gentleness or trust. And then we really kind of just call that call that in as something that we're going to hold between us. And this is to me, this is the spiritual component of the work. And inevitably, no matter what gets brought up, there's just ways that whatever that quality was or the element was that we were looking to bring, it just kind of keeps coming in waves and at different times. Does that answer some of that?
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing, you let me know if this resonates or not, just in reflecting it back to you, is that the idea of the divine and bringing that not only into your own personal work, but also into the room helps support the process. And in doing so, helping people to connect to something greater than themselves as a way of finding purpose and meaning, right? Like when I think about spirituality, and like you said, it doesn't have to be God or even a higher power, so to speak, as much as leaning into purpose and meaning, because it could be your values, it could be being kind, it could be self-acceptance, and so helping people to focus on an intention the beginning of a session helps to bring that greater aspect into the room. And I love, and you and I have talked about this before. I love the way that it kind of anchors you and it keeps showing up and helps people to work through whatever might be showing up in the room through the lens of whatever the intention is. So whether it's self-acceptance or kindness or self-compassion, sometimes it's anger, sometimes it's rage, sometimes, shame. And it doesn't have to be this high vibration concept as much as whatever might be showing up in the room.
Right. You know, that idea of setting intention at the beginning of sessions came out of one of our runs together.
I know.
It was like, yeah, I don't remember what exactly I was thinking about, or maybe I was thinking about a particular client, but really, yeah, finding some ground. Finding some ground. In IFS, some of the qualities of self, our higher selves, are like confidence and clarity, calm, curiosity, creativity. And so these are all qualities if I can help, to kind of anchor myself in with someone and help them kind of, even if they aren't thinking about it, but they're just got this intention to kind of draw that forward, no matter what we're talking about, like we can bring that back in. So, like if what's the attitude toward whatever's happening, and and what would it look like, or what could it be like to bring a little bit more compassion to this, or a little bit more curiosity to this? It just kind of helps to create some pretty quick shifts in how we're holding whatever it is we're looking at.
Yeah, the word rich just like keeps showing up for me. Like it brings this like richness to the interaction. Like it's just a whole other dimension. And I think, in just listening to you talk about it and leaning into it, it has the potential to create a lot of safety in the room because of the grounding and anchoring energy that setting an intention has, right? Because you can always come back to it. So, coming back to our intention, like you said, how do we bring clarity to this? Or how do we want to be with the anger or the rage or whatever it might be?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
I really love that.
That's been really helpful. And you said safety, and it has me thinking about, just connection. And I feel safe when I feel connected. When I feel connected to myself, feel connected to nature, when I feel connected to my colleague and friend. I think it really kind of cultivates more ease of connection.
Absolutely. So, as we're starting to wrap up, Kara, is there anything else about Ayurveda, IFS, the divine that you would like to share with the audience?
So much.
I know we could talk. Right.
Like, like, oh my gosh, thinking here. I think something that was coming up for me as I was preparing a little bit to talk today. There's just like a spirit of inclusivity that I just want to speak, including I just want to include any any pursuit that people have that helps them to be expanded in consciousness, expanded in love, expanded in heart. It all matters. And And, what I'm learning about and practicing the principles of Ayurveda, which dovetails perfectly and supports all the work that I'm doing in IFS, and it supports 12-step recovery and learning how to reparent ourselves with gentleness, humor, love, and respect. It all just kind of feels like a universal truth in returning to our nature. And there are things that we can do to be empowered. I think the more that we learn, as I learn more about, Ayurvedic principles and teachings, it's like every time I'm learning this at the depths of level, I know it's not just to be held by myself. It's information that is to be shared and to be offered. And that feels very, very clear to me. So I am really appreciating an opportunity. You know what they say, if you wanna start figuring out how to talk about something, record it with someone and show everybody you don't know. To everybody. I feel like getting used to talking about it, but this has been a really good practice. But I'm still, such a student, and I am working toward greater depths of understanding, but I can just say that for myself, I didn't realize just how good we were intended to feel,
Mm.
and the ways that I am feeling today in my life, I feel far better, far more energy, far more consistent energy from like the time I wake up to the time I go to bed. My sleep is clear. I may have skated through like into menopause with like very few symptoms of any kind. And this is like there's so much that we endure and think is normal, but it's not actually natural to be feeling all of these symptoms. And I guess it excites me to be able to learn more about that and share that with people and work with energy in ways that helps bring relief and teach practices because the practices are required for us to be well and to take but it is in our hands. And to me that feels really empowering.
Yeah, it's incredibly empowering, and, my biggest takeaway is what you just said, which is about how good you're feeling now and how consistent and how, like, clear everything is and how these practices have really helped you come into yourself and how you never realized how good we were supposed to feel. And then there was this piece about, and I forget your exact words, but it was this idea of like, we don't know. We don't know that we're actually supposed to feel better than we do.
Mhm, mhm. Yes.
Like it's not natural. That's what it was. Not
But what we accept as normal is not natural.
natural.
All of the things that we endure and we suffer through, and because we are suffering so collectively, it doesn't actually mean that that's our natural state. It's because of how a lot of times and how we're living, how we're taking care, how we're eating. One last thing about the how we're eating, it's not like eating one healthy thing. We eat this because it's healthy. If we eat something healthy but we can't digest it, it's not actually healthy for us. So there's this piece about understanding our nature and understanding how we're functioning. And, it's really about bringing balance, nothing in excess, bringing just a level of balance and wanting to return to our natural state of mind is sattva. It's calm, it's peaceful, it's harmonious. That is our natural state. So if you think about like how far off you are from that, that tells you something about maybe where there's some imbalance happening. And I think that's a really great area to explore for yourselves. For myself, it's been really, really impactful.
Awesome. Kara, if people want to find out more about you, where is the best place for them to get in contact with you?
Well, I would say email would probably be the best, easiest way, and it's just karamifflin@gmail.com. I have a profile on the IFS provider website, and I have a profile on Psychology Today
Okay.
website, and you can search by name, Kara Mifflin.
Excellent. And I'll put links to those in the show notes. So if people want to get there easily and quickly they can. Kara, thank you so much for spending this time with me.
You're welcome, Jody. Thank you for asking me. It's like these opportunities that you do something that feels a little bit scary, but it just feels opening, and it gives me an opportunity to really practice being here for myself and trusting you. And yeah, it's been great. I appreciate it very much, what you're doing.
Awesome. All right. Thank you.
Yep. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
I hope something in this conversation sparked insight, inspiration, or even a little soul level curiosity. If you are enjoying the podcast, I would love it if you would take a moment to subscribe, leave a review, or share it with someone you know who's walking the healing path. And if you are listening or watching this on YouTube, you can just click the like button as well. Until next time, stay grounded, stay curious, and keep following the wisdom of your heart.